Well, it's Grace, reminding you about my upcoming middle grade novel, The Gate, the Girl, and the Dragon Again. Pre-orders are kind of important in publishing right now, so if you could pre-order the book, it would be really helping me out a lot. You can pre-order anywhere, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, but because I love indie stores, I am working with 3 of them to give extra goodies for people who order from them. You can get a pin from Porter Square, a sticker from High Five Books, and a virtual classroom visit from the Carl Museum. However, for that virtual visit, you need to purchase the book from the Carl by April 11th. So time is running out. So if you'd like to join or get a recording of that visit, please pre-order right away. See the link in the show notes for more details. Also, after the episode, stay tuned for some bonus content. I'll be sharing something that I'm calling Quick Culture. It's one of the real-life inspirations of the book. I hope you enjoy it.
Hi, I'm Alvina Ling.
And I'm Grace Lin.
And we're book friends
Forever!
We're childhood friends
Who grew up to be
a children's book editor.
and an author and illustrator.
Welcome to Book Friends Forever. This is the authentic and hubristic pride episode.
And check out our website, bookfriendsforever.com, and our Instagram handle at bookfriendsforever_podcast. Alvina, how have you been?
Well, I guess we should mention that we're trying to video our recording, which is new because we normally record this with our cameras off because it affects the audio potentially. But we thought we'd just do a test, right? And see if maybe this is something we could post on YouTube. So
Yeah,
if you're maybe watching or listening to us on YouTube, then hello.
Hello, yes. Yes, people were telling me that it's a very popular thing that people kind of watch podcasts. And so I was like, I guess we could give it a try. So
Yes,
this is
it's
us
true.
giving it a try.
I do sometimes. And if you are watching the video, you can see one of my cats right here. Mo is
Aw.
sleeping behind me.
That's nice.
All right. So you just asked me how I've been.
Yes.
I have been good. I actually went this past weekend to Decatur, Georgia. I don't think I even mentioned that I was going last episode. But so we went down to visit Stephen's bio kids, Zid and Gray. And we try to go about once a year. And we left on a Thursday morning. We took a 6 a.m. flight because I didn't know when our launch meeting was going to be scheduled for that week. Did I talk about I did talk about launch last week. So just in case it was going to be scheduled for that Thursday, I just wanted to not potentially be in the air. But luckily it was scheduled for Tuesday and it didn't have to worry about it. But we did have to wake up very early for that flight. But it was really great. So, they were all working or at school when we arrived. So we just had we went to brunch. We actually went to get manicures and pedicures. Well, we both got pedicures and I also got a manicure and I'm showing that too, the video. And then we went to Little Shop of Stories, which is the great indie bookstore in Decatur. And I wasn't really joking. I actually was kind of serious. I said to Stephen before we went, I said, I wonder who I'm going to run into this time. And it's because our first visit to Decatur, we ran into Laurel Schneider and Dan Santet, if you remember that. And this next time we went, I ran into Ashley Herring Blake, who wrote Ivy Aberdeen. Are you having audio issues?
There's something's beeping. It's going ee, and I'm just okay, it stopped. And I was like, is it like a carbon monoxide beep or something like that?
Ooh,
So I'm like,
yes. It's funny because normally we don't have video, so I wouldn't have noticed
I know
that
you wouldn't have noticed, and I was like,
but you're like, what
but
is
it
happening?
just stopped, so it's okay.
Yes.
All right, sorry.
So we went into, so last year ran into Ashley Herring Blake at the ice cream place, Jenny's, but she was there for, I think, like a romance writers conference. And this time, did the usual walking around the store, looking at which little brown books they had on display, taking photos. And then we were about ready to leave when this guy walked in and he said, "Hi, and he said his name and he said, "I'm from Cleveland and I'm here to sign my books." And I didn't actually hear his name, but Stephen did, and he had enough information to Google. And then he said, "Oh, I think that's Cortez Harris." And I said, "Oh, we published Cortez Harris." So it was indeed Cortez Harris who wrote the picture book Go Tell It, which is a picture book about James Baldwin, which just came out. I think it came out in January, and it's edited by Lisa Yaskowitz. And it's a beautiful book, and it's been getting really wonderful accolades. And so I went up and I introduced myself to him, and he was completely dumbfounded as to the fact that I worked at Little Brown. And he said, I've never met an editor on my, on my travels." And so we took a photo together, and it was really fun. And
What
I
was it
think
called again?
it's called Go Tell It
Oh,
by
nice.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book. And I think it's funny because I thought, oh, it was a great coincidence, but I wasn't as blown away, I think, as he was because I had run into so many people in Decatur in the past. But I guess when I think about it, the fact that we were only in the store for 10 minutes and he happened to walk in and announce his name because I think I might have just left because if he had just walked in quietly and then like spoke quietly to the people at the front desk, I wouldn't have known he was an author and I wouldn't have known, I wouldn't have gone up and seen him signing the book. So I guess it was a very good coincidence. But we had a great rest of the weekend. It was whenever we visit, we always just tag along to all of their events. So Gray and Zin both they play soccer. And then Alex, who's Stephen's friend, my friend too, she coaches Gray's soccer team. So on Saturday, we went to two soccer games. We had, nice dinners. We met a woman who Alex is not kind of, is dating. And it turns out that this woman knows an author who I'm maybe trying to work with. Anyway, so it's just a small
Aw.
world. So yeah, it was a great trip. And then we got back Sunday and I don't know, did karaoke. Trying to, you know, it's interesting because, when people say, "How are you?" These days, I think because the world, everything is so chaotic that I think I'm just trying to just focus on what I can control and not really think too much about the terrible
Yeah.
things going on.
But that's where it gets so tricky, right? Because it's
Right.
like, then you're like, well, what do I have control over? Like, and then you're like, all these terrible things, like, you know, do I have any control? Like, and you, like, uh,
I know.
last week we were talking about like or the week before, and someone was asking if I was going to go to the protests, and I was like, because I was kind of feeling cynical. I was like, I can't control it.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I just want to like stick my
Well, you can
in.
control whether or not you go to protests.
Yes, but I guess I kind of felt
Like,
like
does that make a difference or not?
difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, I can't control what's happening, and I don't think the protest makes a difference. So like that's how I was kind of thinking. And so and that's the whole thing. It's like, but would going to the protest make a difference? Like that's the whole thing. I don't know.
I
Like
think it would make a difference to you for sure. I mean, I know that when I do call my representatives, even though it feels a little pointless, it also feels like I'm doing something.
uh
So I think going to a protest would make you feel like you're trying to do something to
mm,
change things.
yeah,
And
maybe.
I do think, when I see footage of protests, it affects me, and especially when it's a big turnout, I definitely feel like, okay, people care, and they're people
Yeah.
who are trying to change things. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
anyway,
that's it. Like that, I guess it's such an interesting thing. But
yes,
yeah, I'd probably go to, I'm not going to go to a big, like, I think when my friend contacted me, he's like, oh, are you going to go to Boston? Which is like, it would be a 4 hour round trip and like all these things.
yeah,
I don't know if I believe that my presence there will make that much of a difference. I might go to a local one, which is,
yeah.
where like
That's
maybe, like you said, maybe it doesn't really help the world, but maybe it'll make me feel better. I don't know. I don't know. It's just a weird thing.
Well, you'll have to report back next week on how you, but how have you been otherwise?
Let's see, how have I been? The world, I just feel weird about the world, but other than that, I've been trying to do what you do and just concentrate on my own stuff too, and try to think about what I can control and what I can't control. And so I did have actually a big travel week this past week.
Oh yeah,
I
TLA.
Yes, first I went to Cleveland. I had a an event at Case Western University. I was talking to
Oh,
Taiwanese Student Association there,
oh,
which
that's
is
where Stephen went to grad school for
oh,
history.
really? I didn't know
Interesting.
that.
Yeah. Hmm.
So it was really interesting because I'm used to talking to adults, but usually like educators, and I am used to talking to kids, like elementary school kids. But this was a different crowd because it was college kids. And they were all, they were engineering, they were computer science, they all the different, especially they were more in the sciences because it was Case Western, and but they were all kind of there because they were Taiwanese American. And so I was
Hmm.
like, oh, okay, I don't know how this is going to work. But so I gave my speech but it went over really, really great. They were so lovely. And what was really touching was how many of them were so excited that I was speaking because they had read my book when they were
Oh, yeah,
kids.
you're like their hero.
They're like, I read your book when I was in junior high, which I was just like, oh my gosh, how old am I?
Oh, Alex is reading your books to Gray right now. So I think
Oh.
Zin has read your books and Gray. So when one night Gray was playing with like a light, like a
Uh-huh.
fairy light, and she said a quote and then which sounded very beautiful. I
Uh-huh.
was like, huh. And then Alex said, oh, that's a quote from one of Grace's books. It was something like the light lit the night sky. I don't know. Apparently it's from When the Sea Turned to Silver.
Aw,
But I
that's
didn't
sweet.
recognize it. But she has a very strong, very good memory of
Yeah.
that Gray. So
Yeah, well, that's because I remember they were doing all these when I saw them last, they were doing acting out all these parts, and you could tell like they have
yeah,
really good memory for like parts and dialogue and stuff. So maybe they'll be an actress someday or
yeah,
an actor.
maybe.
So, yes, so I went to Cleveland. And I also, after that, I went to TLA. And I just got back from TLA last night. Both of these trips, like the Cleveland trip, I had to like leave here at like 3 in the morning. It was like a really early trip, and
Oh my
same
gosh. Yeah.
thing with the other one, coming back. And then last night I got back like so late, like at midnight, and
Oh
so
no.
it's been like these weird hours.
Hmm.
And I can really feel it. I'm a little worried about my tour because I'm like, oh,
Gonna be
like
exhausting.
this is just a little tip of the iceberg of what it's going to be on the tour. So I'm like, I don't know. I'm not sure how to do it. So this time I tested out my neck pillow, and it went really well for the Cleveland trip. But then this last night trips, it was like way too hot. Like it all depends on
Mm.
like where I'm sitting. The Cleveland trip, I had a lot of space, and then last night was like all bunch of that. I was like way too hot. And then I tried on my Allbirds shoes, and they were like they were fine when I put them on the first time, but then like by the end of the day, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to get a bigger size. So it's like
Oh,
interesting. I guess it's good because
but it's good. Yeah,
it's
you
like
tested
a
in
trial
advance.
run. So
So
um
TLA, I guess, in case any people don't know,
oh,
is the Texas Library Association.
yes, Texas Library Association, where I was really just in and out. It was in Dallas this year. I spoke with my friend Kate Messner for Teachers Day, where that's a special event where teachers are invited to come to the Library Association with the idea. A Library Association conference with the idea that maybe they might want to become librarians,
Hmm.
and
Oh, that's nice.
it was really, really lovely. Like we co-presented. So like we took turns, like I would tell inspiration behind my story, and then she would tell inspiration behind hers, and like then we'd switch off. It was really lovely. I think it was, you never really know how well these things go, but what made me feel good was like after we were done, the wait staff came up. It's like, oh, could we get a copy of the book? We thought it was so
Oh,
interesting watching watching your presentation. So I was like, okay, I think that presentation went okay then. If we
yeah, for sure.
interested. So that was really nice. And then I had a book signing, and then I like fled. I fled Texas.
Yes.
So I didn't really see that many people. I did catch up with my friend Jonathan Oxier, and I did meet Nova Ren.
Ren Suma. Yeah,
And
I
so
saw that photo. Ren
yes,
Suma. Nova Ren
Rensuma.
Suma.
It's
Yeah,
interesting
she's
because
lovely.
I felt like I knew her because I had been following her for years and years and years. And then I was like, and I realized, oh, I don't know you. Like we've never met, but I've seen you online for like all these years.
Mhm.
Because I remember her, like it was during like the Blue Rose Girls years that I saw her on.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
I
Yeah.
mean that like
Yeah, that she first
she
was
was
on your
on there,
radar.
like,
Hmm.
so it was kind of interesting for that. So yes, so I just got back late last night, and yeah, and I'm a little out of it today, but
Yes. And
hoping
that's why
to,
we're recording this on a Friday. We normally
yes,
record on Wednesday, but it's Friday, April 4th.
yes.
Um, all right. So we thought we'd talk about pride, and by pride, not like Pride Month, but hubristic or authentic pride. And I think, is it because you heard a podcast or
Yes.
read something? Okay.
I
Why
did
don't you
hear it on a
introduce
pod.
this then first?
So well, there's two things. There's a book that I read when I was, really young. I think it was like a Scholastic Book Fair book. And it was like I would say like second grade. It's called Jenny, Sam, and the Invisible Hildegard. And it's written by Mary Kennedy.
Oh,
And there's one section in there where the aunt is talking to Jenny, and she says, my mother told me there are two kinds of pride. One is false pride, and it makes you care about the wrong thing, makes you want to dress better than you can afford to, and pretend to be something you're not. And the other makes you grateful for what comes and too proud to pretend. And I was so struck by this, even like in second grade. And I remember thinking about it and thinking about it. And like, that's why I even know, like, I have that book and I have it like kind of like dog-eared because I think about that all the time.
hmm.
About
Yeah.
that, especially now as an author, and all the promotion that we have to do, and like the public facing persona that authors have to put on, like, trying. So I think about that, and then I was listening to Hidden Brain. I know I feel like every time I talk
We
about
should
something,
just, yeah.
I'm like,
Hidden
we
Brain
should
is
get
great though.
sponsored by Hidden Brain or
Yes.
something like that. I was listening to a Hidden Brain podcast, and they were talking about these two kinds of pride, the authentic pride and the hubristic pride. And I was like, oh, that's just like that book, the false pride and the other kind of pride. Um, and it was just really interesting to hear it in a much more scientific and more, I guess,
Yeah. I
deeper,
don't think
put it
I've
in a deeper
listened to
way.
that episode yet. I think I'm behind, but I did find this study. The website I found it on was the National Library of Medicine, and the title of I don't know if it's a report. It's called Authentic and Hubristic Pride, Differential Relations to Aspect of Goal Regulation, Affect, and Self-Control. And the authors are Charles S. Carver and Sherry L. Johnson. But they seem to be looking at the research of someone called Tracy and Robbins, which is called Putting the Self into Self-Conscious Emotions, a Theoretical Model. I don't know. It seems like there's just a lot of
Yes.
studies.
Yeah.
Um, but it was interesting because so some of the things they say is that authentic pride has been characterized by words such as accomplished and confident, whereas hubristic pride has been characterized by words such as arrogant and conceited. And then so they say that authentic pride comes from actual accomplishments and goal attainments. So I think, maybe the pride that we feel when we set a goal and accomplish it or reach it. But hubristic pride is more related to like the belief about your own abilities, like I am naturally talented and I do everything well. Um, so do you feel like you have pride? in yourself?
I do. And it's interesting because of the way I thought about it was different than the way that they put it, like authentic pride versus hubristic pride. Like I almost felt like it was a value thing. Like hubristic pride, I felt like it's uh people it's not about it wasn't about winning the award. It's about like for lack of better words, flaunting the award afterwards. Like it's kind I don't know
Oh
how to
yeah.
because it was
Yeah.
like conceded, it was like, like it was like almost putting too much value in the award to me,
Right.
seemed like the
Right.
hubristic pride
Hmm.
versus the authentic pride was about like, oh, putting your pride into the accomplishment. Um, so do I have pride? That's what's an interesting thing because sometimes I feel like I am shameless, right? Like, or I don't have any pride because I, especially right now because I'm in the midst of promoting, like I'm ramping up the promotion for, the Gate, the Girl, a Dragon. Whenever I go in this promotion cycle, it's kind of like, oh, okay. Like I wish I could be like you have this idealistic idea of an author, like I'm so too cool for school, I don't need to hustle, like like I'm just so good that people line up to buy my my books without you want to be like a Beyonce, right? Like I just drop it and people buy it, right? And whereas I feel like I'm like this, there's like, like, hey, 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 I got a book. Like it's like this little dog, like waiting for somebody to like look at me and be like, look, look, look. And so I feel like to some people, maybe if I were to look outside myself, which I which I, if I can see how uh some people would be like, "Oh, that's so shameless. That's shameless self-promotion. Like, doesn't she have any pride?" Like all those things. So it's a very
Oh.
interesting
Hmm.
juxtaposition, right?
Yeah. Um, I yeah. That I just had a thought of, I guess I was thinking more of, yeah, I think when I think about pride, I think about, am I proud of my accomplishments? And I think I am, but then I'm trying to think like, oh, is it authentic pride or is it hubristic pride? And I think sometimes, so when I was thinking about their definition of hubristic pride, I think I sometimes have hubristic pride when it comes to being proud of how my brain works sometimes. And and I think that's hubristic because I feel like that's just something, and to a certain extent is how I was, what I was born with. Like my my uh my nature. So I guess an
Mhm.
example is sometimes I have impatience with people when they can't deal with life.
Mm,
And I feel like, oh, like just get over it sometimes,
mm,
and but then I realize, oh, everyone's different. And I've been very grateful and blessed to have had a fairly trauma-free childhood,
mhm,
which I think Stephen and I talk a lot about because he did not have a trauma-free childhood, and it totally affects how you deal with life.
mhm,
And so I think whenever I feel myself getting a little bit impatient, I have to remind myself, okay, like that's in a way that's prideful. Like I wouldn't have thought about that in the past as being pride, but reading a little bit about this research made me realize maybe it is
mhm.
that's hubristic pride. I don't know. What do you think? Do you
Hmm.
do you know what I'm talking about?
A little bit. Um, but I don't know if that's hubristic pride. I feel like that's just more like we're not supposed to say blind spots anymore, right? What's it? Uh,
I know, well, yeah, I mean,
it's like
yeah,
having
we're
tunnel vision, right? It's kind of like,
hmm
and in Chinese culture, they talk about the frog in the well, right? The frog who thinks the sky is just
hmm
this circle, like because that's all
hmm
he sees, but there's all this stuff outside of it. And I think that's just more about realizing that there's more than the circle that you've you've the sky that has shone upon you, right?
Mhm.
And that's not a I don't think that's a bad thing, like it's just I think it's more like awareness. So I don't think that's hubristic pride, but maybe it's because you get maybe the annoyance is pride. I don't know. I don't think it's
Yeah.
more
I mean, I guess that's where that feeling of like, oh, why am I getting, it's like, why can't, I think it's the thinking of like, why can't they be more like me?
yeah. Well, I mean,
So that's, I feel like that's a little bit
yeah, I mean,
prideful.
sometimes I feel like that, not so much about why can't they be more like me, but the same thing, like when people like complain, when up and coming authors and illustrators, especially Asian, complain about like, and they won't do this and they won't, and I'll be like, and they only do this, the publisher only, I'm like, they never did that, like, and I was like, dude,
Yeah.
they're only making bookmarks for me, and I'm like, that's actually really good compared to like where I came from, but at the same time I'm like, you know what? Like it's kind of like that, like I suffered, so you should suffer too. And I was like, no, they don't need to suffer like you do. It's fine. But it does take, I feel like it does take a big step back because
Right.
my first instinct is like, you got it so good. And then I was like, take a step back. That's, like it
Yeah. Yeah.
doesn't work that way anymore, and it
Hmm.
shouldn't work that way anymore.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's the thing. I feel when you talk about it that way, that's the closest thing I can come up with that I feel often.
Right. But I guess what you said earlier about people who use any kind of awards or if they use their accomplishments to to inform their self-worth, I guess, as opposed to
Yeah.
using the steps that they took to achieve the accomplishments,
Yeah,
maybe.
it's hard because I think about this because awards are I feel like can be really useful tools, right? And they're a gift given to you by whoever gave you the awards. And I feel like you should, that's why like I'm like, you should use the awards so that you can keep moving forward, right? Uh, so but it's interesting because uh does it become an identity definer, right? Like, and
Right.
is that good or bad, right? Like, I don't know. It's about, I think pride is interesting because it's about image, right? Hubristic image. It's like how other people see you. And so I heard this interesting quote, and I'm gonna butcher it, but it's like you are you are not so this is very difficult. Okay, what you are, what you think people think you are.
What do you
Yeah.
think people think you are?
So it's like it's you aren't
Oh,
yourself, you aren't what people think you are, you are what you
what you
think
think.
people you think you are.
Mm,
So it's kind of like you think people think you are a loser, right? And
right.
so they might not, honestly, they're probably not thinking that. They're not even thinking about you at all, right? But because you think that people think
Right.
you're a loser, that like, oh, I'm such a loser. Or like, oh, you think that people think you're the best author in the world. And like I said, they're not even thinking about you, but because they think
That's
that,
yeah, that's such a good, I mean, because it's a good exercise to ask someone because people do that. They say, if you were to ask your friends about what they think about this, what would they say? And
yeah,
then it is very telling. I actually, when I was younger, I think maybe in high school, I remember I started writing in one of my diaries by describing myself from the point of view of my friends,
yeah. And see,
which, yeah, I should reread that. And
and
yeah.
that is who you become. Like you, I think
Mhm.
that's not you are. Like, you become who you think
Other people,
other people think you are. So
right,
I messed it up. But you become who you think other people think you are.
right. That's interesting.
And
But
because
is that hubris,
hubris, well, and that's where the hubristic pride is, right? Or what I was talking about, like there's false pride and there's authentic pride. The false pride is like you want people to think you are something else, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and and you want people to think you are a brilliant genius author, you know?
Mhm.
But the truth is, but you can only be like I said, I I want people to think that I am so successful that all I have to do is publish a book and it's a New York Times bestseller, what blah 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 blah. Like I'm king of the world, right? So that's what I want people to think. That's the hubristic pride. But the truth is, um, I have to have pride in my real pride in myself and be like, I'm too proud to pretend that that's really how it works. Like
Mhm.
I have to,
Right. You
you
know that you have to work hard and you
yeah,
have
I
to
have to work
hustle
hard. I have
and
to
you
be
have to,
scrappy. I have to do all these things and I can't be ashamed of that,
right.
like,
You have to be proud of that, of the
yeah,
hard work that it
yeah.
takes.
But, it's hard because this goes to our talk about genius, right? Because
Mhm.
I think the world wants geniuses and
Right.
admires geniuses. And I think that was in the podcast too. They were saying the sad thing is that the tricky thing is that in general, people like superficially, if you like not like a new person in the group comes in with this hubristic pride, everybody really admires them, like, and they think they're really awesome. But, it's only after time and people get to know them one on one that they're like, but the the impression that hubristic pride gives it usually garners quite a bit of reward, like that's the
Mhm.
truth. um and so yeah, like I said, it goes back to the genius thing. Like if I could pretend that all these things happen because I'm just a genius, then people will, and I say that I'm a genius, most people will take me for my word and think I'm a genius. I mean, you only have to look at our certain people in our
Mhm.
world and you see how that works.
Right. Although I've said that you're a genius. So if you were to say, other people think I'm a genius, so then you are a genius.
I feel like one person, but she's also my editor. She's in a
Uh,
group, so she kind of has. That's like saying, not that you're my mom, but that's like saying, like that's the equivalent of like, my mom thinks I'm
yeah. Oh.
awesome, which is lovely, but
So is the takeaway here that you should have pride in in your hard work and accomplishments, but not in your abilities?
I
What is
don't
the takeaway?
know. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think that to me, I don't know. There's another Chinese story where there's this he's like a minister to the king, and these diplomats come to see him, and they come to his house and they see he's running around and he's helping his wife wash her feet and all these things, and the one of the other diplomats is like so embarrassed, like, how can you like show yourself like this, like you should you should come out very formal and be like this. And he's like, no, that's ridiculous. He's like, this way I'm completely open with everything, so everybody knows who I am, like completely transparently. So if there is something bad, if somebody says something bad, they know it's not true because I'm an open book. So I don't know
Mhm.
if that's right either, but that's kind of the other.
Well, I guess, yeah, maybe the takeaway is it is better to be authentic and to be open.
Yeah.
Okay, in that paper, it says authentic pride as a core self-conscious emotion is believed to motivate people to persevere in the absence of extrinsic incentives and to foster the pursuit of altruistic and valued goal-relevant behavior. Um, so it says, whereas hubristic pride has been found to relate to low levels of conscientiousness as well as to higher levels of antisocial behavior. So I guess the takeaway is it's better to have all this authentic pride and to be more focused on perseverance, regardless of outcome, I guess, or regardless of external reward.
Yeah. I guess that's the takeaway.
All right.
Fortune cookies.
Well, let's move on to our fortune cookie segment. I think the big news, so on March 14th, Trump signed an executive order that called for the elimination, amongst many other things, of the IMLS, which stands for the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Um, do you want to talk about what that would mean?
So four of the big five publishers, Hachette Book Group, Macmillan Publishers, Penguin Random House, and Simon & Schuster, and Source Books sent a letter to Congress on April 3rd expressing deep concern over the state of the nation's libraries following a week of unprecedented turmoil at the Institute of Museum and Library Services, the agency responsible for distributing federal funds to libraries. So
Yes, basically, I think all of the funding for libraries would potentially go away. So, okay, I guess there is more in the article. It says, so the organization Every Library, which I know we have both supported, they said that basically the libraries across the country began receiving official notices from Soderling. Who's Soderling? Um, oh, Keith Southerling, who is the Deputy Secretary of Labor. So basically, they got these letters saying that they were terminating their grants effective April 1st. Those grants are funded by $294.8 million appropriated by Congress. So, I mean, it's devastating to our libraries. So it's the single largest source of federal library funding. Um, So in the letter, the publishers asserted that defunding libraries would result in mass closures and the destruction of a system that today benefits millions of Americans. So we were calling on Congress to reject the executive order to close IMLS and restore its funding. So I mean, I guess it's a stay tuned situation. But
everything's
it is,
getting defunded,
I
you know,
know,
like
I know. I talked to my niece, technically my first cousin, once removed, my cousin's daughter, so my cousin works for the Smithsonian, and
mm,
they initially were like, we're just gonna lay low, and then of course they're being slashed, and they're waiting for JD Vance to come in and basically tell them what's American or not and what they're allowed to display or not. So
yeah,
it's pretty
it's
devastating.
pretty terrible.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's definitely completely change. It's they're changing culture. They're trying to change culture as we know it, right? And it's what's so interesting is that for all this time we've let culture kind of grow and like the way like organically, and they're like coming in and they're just like, nope, they're like ripping everything out and we're planting what we want. Like it's really fascinatingly awful, you know.
I mean, I guess there's that saying, like, what a time to be alive. I mean, yeah, I mean, every day there's something new
I
that is
know. I'm curious,
horrific.
like that's why it's so hard to be like, yay, buy my book, you know, like, but it's so hard because it's like, well, um, but at the same time, like as authors, we are part of the culture that was organically there, and like, and if we don't say buy our books or don't make our books, then like there's just that much more space for them to put the culture they want instead of what people
Yeah,
I don't know. That wasn't as eloquent as it could have been, but I think people
but I
got the
know what
gist
you
of it.
mean. Yeah, I mean, I think that's going back to what I said at the beginning is I feel like that is the thing we can control is, I mean, what I can control is the books that I work on, the books that we publish, try to publish them to the best of our abilities, try to get them out to as wide an audience as we can. And that includes your book.
Yeah.
And so that is, I feel like that is the thing we can and should focus on. While also trying to make our voice heard in other ways too along the way. But I think that's our primary job as artists, as people who work in the arts. is to create art and produce art. So, yeah.
That's, yeah, so cheerful.
I mean, well, I think what is cheerful is that art is hope and art is a bright spot in during dark times. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well,
I
it's interesting. I was talking to Lexi at High Five Books, my local bookstore. She's the owner. And I was saying, oh, she's saying that kids these days, they all want like horror and gore and like dystopian. And I was like, oh, really? And she's like, but all the adults just want cozy fantasy. They just want cozy fantasy, cozy like. And I was like, I understand. So I think that's
that is interesting. I mean, the new Hunger Games novel is
mhm.
doing amazingly well. I think it sold like 1.8 million
Yeah, yeah.
copies in the first week or something. And I did wonder about dystopian. I was listening to a podcast where they're discussing that when it first came out, I think it was 2008 was the first book, and I don't think it hit as hard. Like I think it was received as more of a commentary on reality television,
Hmm.
more so than an authoritarian government.
Hmm.
But I think now it's hitting hard in
Yeah.
this rebellion and trying to stand up to a dictatorship and tr to try to make things better. And, in the Hunger Games, so this is a prequel. I haven't read the book, but it's set, I think, 25 years in the past because it's the Woody Harrelson character. I forget his name.
Hey,
The
Mitch.
actual Haymitch. Yes. So it's his when he's a teenager, his story. And I think maybe what is hopeful is that everyone who's read the Hunger Games trilogy, spoiler alert, you know that they do eventually succeed in overthrowing the government and changing things. But it can be a long journey. So, we're at the dismantling phase, which is terrifying, but I hope we'll also be here, and I hope it's not 25 years, but I hope we're also here to see things turn around for the better again.
Yeah. Well, the hope is that we can stop the dismantling or
Right.
something stops the dismantling or or it's not completely dismantled or something.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Okay. Day by day.
Day by day, buy my book.
Ugh.
This is
Yes.
sad.
All right. Should we go to the next segment? I think
All
you're
right.
introducing it.
Okay, now it's time for our Tell Me About segment. Yay! Oh, just a FYI, for the next couple weeks after each episode, there's going to be a quick culture bonus content little feature about some of the real life inspirations behind my upcoming book, The Gate, the Girl, and the Dragon. And because you'll be hearing from me, then I thought that it would be better if these Tell Me Abouts for at least for a couple more episodes are not about my book, it's more about Alvina. So,
Tell me about.
Alvina, tell me about Big Enough by Regina Link.
Sure. So Regina is the creator that you met last week
Yeah.
and mistook for someone else.
Yes.
But so Big Enough is Regina Link is the author artist, and Big Enough is her debut picture book. And it is the origin story behind the character that she had created called the Oxford Boy. And she has a web comic about it, and she published a adult gift book that features some of these web comics. But this is a wholly original, brand new picture book, and it's about a little boy named Afu who has a big imagination.
Aw.
Um, but he can't imagine that he's big enough yet to be the Oxford Boy. But his grandfather asks him to bring the family ox home from the woods, and he gets a lot of unsolicited advice, like, oh, don't ride the ox, don't guide the ox by his horns, don't walk in front of or behind the ox, all these unsolicited advice. But he realizes gradually that he actually needs to do exactly what he was told not to do in order to succeed. So I think it's pretty thought provoking because it's a story about the about how young people can do hard things, but it's also a story about having the wisdom to know what what to do, even if you're told not to do something. So that can be a little tricky, I think, for kids. Maybe it's like I'm looking at a big mooncake for Little Star. I know you got some criticism of like Little Star was told not to eat the cookie,
She was
but
being naughty.
if she didn't eat the cookie, then we wouldn't have the phases of the moon. Anyway, so a little bit similar to that. Anyway, it is the art in this book is so exquisite. I mean, that's what I fell
Yeah.
in love with when I first.
Mhm.
There was one piece of finished art when it was submitted, and it still exists in the book. It's the ox and Afu looking, and it's a wordless spread of them looking at each other. And Regina uses, she's inspired by some traditional Chinese brush painting called gongxi painting, but she does do it digitally. So it has a both classic and fresh modern feel, which makes it really unique, I think. And
Yeah.
she also uses a lot of traditional Chinese philosophy in her writing.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
really like it because there's like a beautiful stillness to it, um, that I think is really unique compared to a lot of the art that we see now. Like we have a lot, I think because digital tools are is so closely related to animation, we have a lot of like really like active and
Mhm.
comical, like almost like overstated emotions in the illustrations these days. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's just so unique to see hers, which is like kind of like very still and over a little bit understated,
Yeah,
um, so I'm
yeah,
excited for her book.
yeah, I am too. So that just came out on April 1st. And it's been getting some nice accolades. So it was Indie Next Pick.
I
Uh,
think Betsy Bird
Hughes,
picked it
yeah,
after,
Betsy
yeah,
Bird picked it as a
as a,
Caldecott hopeful, which
yep.
is very exciting because even the
Yay.
fact that it's on her radar, it's a debut picture
Hmm.
book. Um, so it is very exciting.
Yay.
Yay.
Who
All
knows?
right.
It's
I
way too
know.
early though for all
And
these.
we will not be prideful if we do get that award. All right.
Hubristic pride.
Yes. So now we'll end as we always do with what we're grateful for. I'll start this week. Speaking of art and being grateful for art, so there's a new season of Love on the Spectrum that just dropped, and this is a reality show, reality dating show, which is Stephen and my favorite brand, and my cat is stretching. Um, and so originally it was an Australian reality show, and it follows autistic people at different uh I guess different ends of the spectrum. But mostly I would say not on the mild end of the spectrum. So some of them are pretty, I guess, intellectually impaired. I don't know if that's the proper term, but I would say it's so heartwarming. So basically, you follow them as they go on dates and they look for love, and it's so sweet. And what's great is so it's a third season of the U.S. version, and you see some of the same characters across seasons, and you see them grow, and there's some who are in relationships, and you see how their relationships grow and develop. So there's one adorable couple, and I think when they met, I think she was a teenager, either a teenager or early 20s, and they've been together all three seasons, and they're so sweet and together. There's another couple that they met in the second season, and they're still together now in the third season, and they just celebrated their 1 year anniversary. And
Aw,
it's the most heartwarming show. I would just say just I would recommend it if anyone has not seen it. I think it will make you joyful.
nice.
So, and that's what we need right now.
Yes.
Grace, what are you grateful for?
All right. So I'm laughing because we had just had some technical difficulties that hopefully Alex will cut out, but who knows? But I think it was on Tuesday that Cory Booker did his really, 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 really long speech slash filibuster, um, where he broke Strom Thurmond's record of I think Strom Thurmond's was like 24 hours and 17 minutes or something like that. And Cory Booker talked for over 25 hours, basically just talking about all the wrongs and all the pain and suffering that Trump's decisions and his administration has caused. Like he was reading basically like the letters and the emails and the calls of his constituents and all these things, and telling stories. And it was just a really, you know, I know a lot of people will say like, oh, it didn't accomplish anything. And this kind of ties back to what we were talking about in the very beginning of our episode. Like, did it accomplish anything? Like, what did it accomplish? But I don't know, there was something about it like that was really touching to me, that I really felt grateful for. I think if anything, it was just because it was just so earnest, and it was just like it was just so nice to know that someone is trying to do something, and even with the knowledge that like maybe it won't accomplish anything, but at least we're trying, like. And so that's kind of why I decided I will probably march locally, because I wasn't even going to march at all, but I was like, at least I'll march locally, because maybe it does something. So I am really grateful for Cory Booker to have done his mega marathon speech, if only because it makes me feel like, okay, we all have to try something.
I think it got attention. I do wish, he spoke for so long, but he didn't say anything in support of the Palestinians in Gaza. And I feel like that was a huge omission. But I do think in a way you just need all people doing what they can.
Yeah.
And, and then it all maybe combines to something.
Yeah. I guess that's what it is.
Yeah.
And I guess what it is too is like realizing that like because honestly I didn't dislike Cory Booker, but like I was just kind of like he's just seemed like
it's so funny. I just like a month ago I was like, where is Cory Booker? What is, because he used to always there used to be always some video of him like at some hearing, speaking out. And I just feel like he's been so quiet. So I'm glad that
maybe he was all practicing for this.
Yeah, he's practicing like not peeing for
and like they said he had like all
hours.
these binders and stuff, so maybe he was like prepping for this. But
yeah, no, that makes sense.
But no, I guess it's like, but the truth is he's far from a perfect leader, right? And
no one's perfect.
Maybe that's what I liked, was like, oh, okay, maybe we can just all embrace the imperfections and like take as much good of what he can do, and then somebody else can fill in the other parts that we'd like to have happen, so I don't know, it was just really it was nice to know that, so I felt really good about that. So I'm really grateful for that. I'm really grateful that I'm home and all the flights went smoothly. I wasn't delayed or anything like that, which is unusual for me, so I was like really happy about that. And most of all, I think I'm just really grateful that I'm still here as an author. At TLA, it was just whenever I see other authors, it's just an interesting thing to think like, gosh, I've been doing this for so long, right?
Yeah.
I was having a conversation with my friend Jonathan, and I think we were talking about RISD, and he was just like, oh, like who else, because I said, oh, so many of us want to be children's book authors and illustrators, so many of us became children's book authors and illustrators, and he's just like, oh, who else? And I was like, oh, most of them, like a lot of them started off bigger and better than me, but most of them have dropped away.
They got off the bus.
Yeah, they got off the bus, and so I'm grateful that I stayed on the bus. I hope I can stay on the bus longer.
Yeah, I'm sure you can.
We'll see.
All right, and that was the Authentic and Hubristic Pride episode. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to Alex at Paceywork Studio for editing this podcast. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. And tell a friend about it.
And tag us on social media using the hashtag BookFriendsForever, or send us a message via Instagram at bookfriendsforever_podcast, or via our website, bookfriendsforever.com. And please join our Patreon, which we'll do something with someday.
We will. I'm Alvina Ling. You can find me at Planet Alvina on TikTok and at Alvina Ling on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads.
And I'm Grace Lin. You can find me at Pacey Lin on Instagram and Threads, and author Grace Lin on Facebook and Blue Sky. And please stay after the episode to hear a little bit of my quick culture thing. Content? I have to think of what quick culture series, I'll call it.
Yes. Have a great week.
And don't forget to read. Bye.
Goodbye.
Oh,
to our video people.
They can see us. Bye.
Lions are an important animal in Chinese culture, but they are not indigenous to China. In fact, historians believe that China was only introduced to lions when one was sent as a tributary gift to the emperor during the time of the Silk Road over 2,000 years ago. Well, that lion definitely made an impression. The Chinese embraced the lion as a guardian animal, partly because of their majesty, and partly because of the spread of Buddhism from India, which features the lion as a protector. In fact, it is probably the use of stone lions as tomb ornaments from other countries that inspired the Chinese practice of decorating property gates of wealthy homes and important buildings with a pair of stone lions. And this tradition of guardian stone lions was embraced by the architects of San Francisco's Chinatown, who placed Chinese lion statues in front of their Chinatown gates. This was then copied by Chinatowns all over the country and the world. However, you'll notice that the stone lions of China and Chinatown are not quite like the lions we see in real life. Very likely, the first stone lions in China were carved after the death of the real lion, so the artists took some liberties, carving more of their idea of what a lion was rather than what one actually looked like. And probably, to give the lions even more gravitas and power, the artisans let characteristics of mythical beasts influence their carving. That is why Chinese stone lions have exaggerated claws and eyes and teeth, as well as curls, which were at one time used to denote the rank of the owners. And just like in my book, the lions flanking these gates are not exactly the same. According to tradition, when you face the statues, the one on the left is supposed to be the lioness, and the one on the right is a male. Together, they symbolize the balance of yin and yang. Another way you can tell the difference between the two is by what the statues are holding. The male lion should have his paw on an embroidered ball, which symbolizes the unity of the world. The female lioness holds a cub, which symbolizes a thriving future. So the two lions, the cub and the embroidered ball, are all main characters in my book, The Gate, the Girl, and the Dragon. I hope you read the book to find out what happens to them.